because they didn't.
I know, I don't either. You know, I'm just gonna lay it out bluntly. I'm gonna lay it out so that people can understand what's, and I'm gonna ask the question because I have to ask the question. I've been living in transitional housing in Skid Row since 1999 and permanent housing in Skid Row since 1999. And let me tell you something. All the people can come in here and tell you that, you know, the people aren't being heard. But when he speaks, the people are being heard. Okay? There are people in my building, no offense to anyone, but there are people in those buildings down there that would stand in front of the building and wait for a woman to walk by because they could offer her a $5 hit of crack for sex. Okay? And that still goes on. So who's protecting those people? Alright? Who's speaking for those people? He's speaking for those people. Okay? It's still happening. The other thing, I've seen the changes. I've had the opportunity. When Estela Lopez from the city, the bid was putting up those bright lights so that way those dope dealers would be scared from certain places and, well, at least have the light shine upon them. And I would email her and say, how come my light, and how come there's not a light in front of my building? Across the street is a transitional housing in the toy district, where a friend of mine got brain damage. A year she was clean, okay? And this is a transitional housing facility for the dually diagnosed, somebody that suffers with mental illness and a substance abuse problem. And the dope man was sitting right there, feeding her crack one night. As I walked by, fear, because I'm not going to say anything. You don't want to approach these people when the crack man is right there, or was right there. And when I came back that evening for my choir rehearsal, her face was on the sidewalk, her lips in urine, while the crack man was laughing at her, or laughing, having a good time. I walked in, got my friends, we brought her inside. 2 days later, they found her in a room foaming at the mouth, brain damage in the hospital. Who's speaking for these people? That man right there. Okay? For too long, this neighborhood has gone with lawlessness, has been lawless. And we've allowed that to happen. People have allowed that to happen. Not because they didn't care, but because it wasn't convenient at the time. Because you could isolate the people. You didn't have to see it. But who's speaking for these people now? That man right there. But you can attack him all you want to. I live there. My question right now is, we don't have a bid in a certain part of downtown, in Skid Row. And right now, I'm afraid. Because I hear my landlord asking, are we going to get that money for our security guards and for our parks people that watch that area, that work with the LAPD to make sure that that part of the area continues to somehow get as good as the area that the bid is in. This is what's going on. You have residents now living there, like me, people in Skid Row Housing Trust, people that can go to the bids and ask, or the LAPD, email a senior lead officer and say something's going on. Nobody's listening to me. Please listen to me. Please help me. Even the homeless people are doing that. These advocates, so-called advocates, don't speak for me. They don't speak for my neighbors, the ones that continue to suffer, because they want to prove a point. Some sort of a point that they have the right to have this place continue to be lawless. This isn't about gentrification in Skid Row. There are 88,000 homeless people in the county and city of Los Angeles right now, yet everybody's focused on a little over 500 that sleep on the streets at night in Skid Row. Why is that?
Very well said.
Why? Why is that? So, my question to all of you in this room, please help us in that area. Please help my landlord, SRO Housing Corporation, when they go up and try to ask for the money for their security guards. Because it's their security guards that also watch out for me. I guarantee you, if SRO Housing Corporation had those security guards there, I wouldn't want to live there. I guarantee you, I would be probably living on the street because it'd probably be safer. But out on the street somewhere outside of downtown and outside of Skid Row. So let me tell you this right now. We need on-site supportive housing. That's what we need to push for. We need to push for it in all of our housing, SRO Housing Corporation, Skid Row Housing Trust. That's what was missing. But the most important thing, the conclusion that I came up with when I was attacking the harm reduction approach to substance abuse, because I did at one time, I've come to the conclusion, it doesn't matter if it's social model recovery, it doesn't matter if it's harm reduction recovery and that housing in Skid Row. Our problem is that the dope man was right in front of that housing selling the dope. How was any one of those programs going to work? So please, how are we going to make sure that we get the money this year for the people that take care of our parks and the part of Skid Row that doesn't have a bid?
Let's have the commander maybe address parts of that. Thank you for that question, too.
Thanks, Don. Hey, and thank you again. The problem we're having right now is the Skid Row Housing Trust maintains 2 parks.
SRO Housing Corporation.
SRO Housing Corporation, sorry. Maintains 2 parks in downtown Los Angeles, the only 2 parks in downtown Los Angeles. One on 5th and Gladys, and the other one down on 7th and Crocker. And they're great parks. One's right across from Carlos Ninos. They get a Friday afternoon thing for the kids down there. The problem is their funding is coming due in March, I think it is, Anita. And the problem is we don't know where the money's going to come or if the money's going to come to maintain control of those parks and to maintain the security guards that are in those parks. And I tell you what, if there's no security guards in those parks, then we might as well just put a big fence around them and not let anybody in, because without the security guards that are there, those parks just become a lawless place that Don was describing.
But a lot of that money is tied to security guards that roam that no man's land, that in that area without a bid that SRO has, and that's important money for us.
The bids have been tremendous, and the bids, unfortunately, where the bids intersect, there's a couple of gaps in there. We were able to remove one down by South Park, so that the Fashion District bid is now taking over, I think, a small chunk of that, so that place is getting covered. We definitely need to have bid coverage in there, because it's a world of difference in a place that has a business improvement district and one that doesn't.
We have time for a few more questions. This gentleman first, then you.
Thank you. Just a quick question on numbers. The Cardifact map I found unbelievably informative, but I'm wondering, even with the reduction that we're talking about today from 5 years ago to now, would you, and I put this question to anybody, is Skid Row, what we call Skid Row, is it still the highest concentration of homeless in America today?
Well, you know what, it always, I guess I could probably answer that as well as anybody. You know what, I can't say for sure, Tom, whether that's the case, but I can tell you this, when we do the maps, if you look at the area immediately surrounding the police station, folks are allowed to sleep on the streets out there from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. And if you come in before 6 o'clock, the concentration of folks on 5th Street, just right around the police station, when they did the most recent map, is it's incredible. There's a lot of people are still there. I think they want to live near the police station, maybe because they feel safer, because there's cops coming and going all the time, and they recognize that that's a safe place to sleep. The Skid Row that we knew when we first started this whole business has compressed. The Main Street, I don't think anybody could say Main Street's part of Skid Row anymore, when in fact 2 years ago it was. And it's getting smaller and smaller, the area that we think of when we think of Skid Row. You don't see people camping out too much on Los Angeles Street now. We're thinking Skid Row's maybe even all the way over by Maple and Wall and maybe over towards Central. So it's compressing, but the density in that compressed area I think is still pretty high. I think we still have 500 or 600 people sleeping in just a few small blocks now at night.
Can I add an answer to this too? Because one of the reasons you have such a high concentration of homeless people in Skid Row is because in the rest of Los Angeles City and County, it has been extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to cite programs that offer substance abuse treatment, that offer not only shelter, but that offer housing and support services for people who are homeless. So you are going to have a very high concentration of human distress in Skid Row until there is the political will and the neighborhood support to site housing and services for people who need them in the communities that they are already living in and that they grew up in many cases. And I think that is going to take really communicating to your elected officials in particular the support for every part of this region.